Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Art Levine. Are you a compassionate person? If you're like me, you would like to think of yourself as compassionate. But are we really? And if not, why should we be? This week's Torah portion, Tisa, contains, at Exodus 34:6, the so-called 13 divine attributes. It is a passage that is part of Tachanun in our daily liturgy, also said on every fast day and during Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. It begins, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun. The Lord, a God compassionate and gracious. It continues with the other divine attributes, including slow to anger and abundant in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. These attributes are God's self-description. God is describing God's self to Moses. Note that compassion, rachum, which has the same root as the word rechem, meaning womb, is the first of God's self-descriptors. What does it actually mean to be compassionate? Jewishly, it means to feel concern for those who are suffering and to act to reduce their suffering, to give to them according to their needs. There are, of course, many examples in the Torah of God's compassion, the quintessential example being God hearing the cries of the Israelites and then acting to remove them from the unending misery of slavery. In fact, in his Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides explained that the divine attributes refer only to God's actions, not to God's qualities, since ascribing emotions to God would be limiting. So if we are to consider ourselves to be compassionate, we must first see and or hear the suffering of others. Then we must take action to mitigate their suffering. And this is where, I'm sorry to say, many of us fall short. We feel pity, but we do little or nothing to help mitigate suffering. We all know that there are people who are suffering. They or their loved ones are ill or have experienced a death in their family. They have been in an accident. They've lost their jobs, their business, or their home. They have experienced heartache in a relationship. They're deeply hurt or even in despair from any of innumerable causes. Perhaps they are Jews living in mud huts in Ethiopia, a situation that I and others seek to ameliorate through our website, angieonline.org. That's ANJIE online.org. At the beginning of my remarks, I asked, if we are not compassionate, why should we be? Being Jews, we are required to try to emulate God, to walk in his ways. Not only does God identify compassion first among the divine attributes, the phrase merciful and gracious God is repeated 9 times in the Bible. As Rabbi Abraham Bloch noted in his A Book of Jewish Ethical Concepts, most biblical social laws are motivated by compassion. As examples, we can think of the year of the sabbatical, the law of the sabbatical year, at which time the poor were given free access to the produce of the soil, the required nightly restoration of a garment taken from a poor borrower in pledge for a loan, the prohibition upon cursing the deaf or placing a stumbling block before the blind, the obligation to treat the stranger fairly, a master's abuse of a slave resulting in he being set free, the repeated demands to care for the widow and the orphan, and for everyone, including even work animals, a weekly day of rest. Why also do we repeat the 13 divine attributes in prayer? Because we ask God to be compassionate with us. We must treat others as we would wish to be treated. Indeed, it's likely that each of us needs compassion now, and even if not, that we will, God forbid, in the future. Should we not, therefore, be motivated to demonstrate our compassion to others? Our tradition is so insistent that we be living vessels of compassion that the Talmud asserts that anyone who is not compassionate with people is certainly not a descendant of our forefather Abraham. Acts of compassion include mercy, treating others who are suffering better than they deserve, and forgiving those who suffer from guilt. We might say that God has a passion for compassion, and so should we. This Shabbat, may we resolve upon the state of our compassion and resolve to increase our actions to ease the suffering of others. For more information about this and many other Jewish topics, please visit theethicaltorah.com. Shabbat Shalom, and thanks for watching.